Sean Connery plays a trooper sentenced to a British military prison in the late stages of World War II. Along with the other prisoners, he's pushed to his physical limits by a sadistic staff sergeant. This one has rich themes and strong characters, so join us as we discuss The Hill. Welcome everyone to the Collector's Cut. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
Get this straight. One job's as important as the next.
This is a movie podcast, and we are working through Sidney Lumet season here on the Collector's Cut. This is movie number 5 of the season, and it is The Hill from 1965. So just a year after Failsafe and Pawnbroker. He was a busy dude, was Sidney. Yeah. But this one stars Sean Connery. It is a prisoner movie of sorts. It's not a war movie, but it does take place during a war because it's a I don't know if you call this technically a POW camp, but it's a prison for the British military. Well, it's a British military prison for members of the British military who they have deemed to need punishment because they've went AWOL, because they've done something, they've went against orders, they've mutinied, whatever it is. In some cases, a lot more petty is some of the examples we get, to be honest. But so it's a prison run by the military for people in that same military who need disciplined.
I'm fairly certain it's a slang term, but apparently the terminology is glass house.
Yes, I think I heard that as well at some point in the movie. So, but that's the gist of it. That's what we're getting into, which is already an interesting dynamic actually compared to other prison movies or even like other prisoner of war movies, because typically it's usually prisoners in a prison run by the opposing side. So when they get cruel, it's like, oh yeah, you're the enemy, and it's a bit inhumane, and we expect better, but we're not surprised you're doing this. But when someone in your own military's doing it, it kind of feels a little bit more, I don't know, malicious, a little bit more,
It removes that sense of the other, like, the idea that you can dehumanize or remove them from the idea of being a person, but it intensifies the idea of, this is someone who is not fighting for their country the same way that I am. They don't believe the same things I am, which can make it all the more cruel and intense in that way.
Yeah, so that is the premise. Sean Connery plays the lead role of Joe Roberts. Him and 4 other men arrive at the prison, and it's about their time there that the movie tells its story. And various people who are running the place, some of the guards that get more in their face. And it's called The Hill because there is literally a man-made hill inside this prison grounds that has been built by prisoners, and it's basically just sand and rock, and it makes like a sort of pyramid-looking kind of thing, and they make them run up and down it as punishment. So, like, I can see doing a few of these intentionally for exercise, but they're not stopping there. They're like, no, you go up and down like 50 times, you runts.
The stated purpose of this place, as they say, is to turn these troops that defected, did these things, whatever crimes they committed, and turn them into model troops. But by God, the cardio in this place, ignoring the hill entirely, there is not a single time that the soldiers are ever told to march. It is always double march, and they are sprinting everywhere they go.
Can I just say this right now? This double march looks really silly to me. Like, see, whenever you get a wide shot of them doing this little sort of hop, hop, hop with their knees coming up, it looks really goofy. And I would get punished so badly in a place like this because I'd be giggling at how stupid everything is the entire time.
You'd be giggling right up until they made you do it, and then you'd see, like, oh, wait, this sucks. Never mind.
I'm not saying they wouldn't break me, but I'd break like the Joker. I'd be laughing maniacally and probably try and kill some people, is my guess.
I don't know if you even mentioned in the breakdown of it, but this place is also seemingly in the middle of an incredibly hot desert.
Yes.
It is sweltering the entire time.
It's set during World War II, and they are in the desert, because they're in North Africa, I believe, and they are... Yeah, they're things are very... This is the thing, like, there's a couple of minor references to the war that's going on, but for the most part, it's pretty insular. It's all just about what they're doing here with these men and what their goal is here, right? Any little references to the war going on, or... I don't even know if it ever specifically says what year it is. Like, obviously we know it's in between 39 and 45, because we know when World War II is, but other than that, I mean, it's hard to say. So
Yeah, I'm just looking through like trivia or something, seeing if it was specifically mentioned, but I don't see anything.
yeah, I mean, it's possible there's a calendar up in like one of the rooms or something, and you can get it from that. But not that it really matters in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, the other cast member here that I am familiar with is Ossie Davis. He plays a character named King, who.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know him mainly as a much older actor. He's in Bubba Hotep. I know him from that and a few other things around that time period. So in the 90s and 2000s. But he's here as a much younger man, obviously, given that it is 1965. And notably, because he's black, he sticks out amongst everyone else. And that is definitely a subject that comes up over the course of the story of the movie with how he's treated and what the officers who are in charge think of him and things like that. So that's something that gets into, and then there's a whole cast of characters. There is one that I kind of recognize, although I couldn't tell you. I mean, I'm sure I'll click on him in a second and see something instantly. But Bartlett, played by Roy Kinnear,
Yes.
like I definitely know his face from something.
He is the father of Veruca Salt from the original Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Okay. I mean, that might be it, I guess. I'm not particularly attached to that movie, so I feel like there might be something else that I'm thinking of, but it may just be that. My memory may
that's
just
the one that got me.
That may just be the thing that my memory's tugging on. But I mean, he's got a bloody long career. It's taking ages to scroll down now. But yeah, so yeah, that was the only other face that I recognised directly. Now, it's possible that I have seen some of these people in other movies and just don't remember them. That's entirely possible. Oh, here we go. Juggernaut, a movie we did on this very show.
Oh, that's right. He wasn't that.
Yeah.
I was thinking, because that's when I clicked on him on IMDb, I'm like, Roy Kinnear, I'm sure I clicked on him before, but like I couldn't immediately see anything in his history that was jumping out of me.
Yeah, I knew it was something more recent. He was also in Taste the Blood of Dracula, which we did last year on Screams. So there you go. I have a couple of things I've seen him in.
There you go. Yep.
Neat. All right.
Also, there is one of the staff sergeants, which are essentially kind of like the wardens of the place, is played by Ian Hendry. He struck that same line for me that Roy Kinnear struck for you, where I feel like I've seen him in something. And looking through, I'm not recognizing anything, but just the name Ian Hendry sounds so familiar to me.
Yeah, nothing's springing to mind. He was in Get Carter, which I've not seen, so I can't say much about that. But it's just kind of interesting that this one doesn't have a lot of overlap with the other casts from Lumet's films. I feel like this is mostly a new set, although Sean Connery's in the next movie we're going to do as well, so at least one of them sticks around at the very least. But interesting to see all the same. So yeah, basic premise out the way. They get into the prison. They've all done something different. It's not like they were all together beforehand. They've just been lumped together because they happen to be arriving together, and they stay in the same cell, these 5 men. And the staff, they keep calling them staff, all the generals that are ordering them around. They are running them a bit too hard, and that's something we'll get into. But as always, we'll start spoiler free. We'll give you warning before we get into the spoilers. And if you're enjoying the show on YouTube, do hit the like button. It helps us out a bunch if you do. And of course, you can give us 5 stars on your podcast app. And you can also support the show via Patreon or YouTube membership and get some bonuses for your troubles. And I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. So yeah, I guess I'll straight into the question then. David, what did you think of The Hill?
I really liked it. I think that this one, it's not so much like a plot-based movie. It feels a lot more character drama, character study sort of thing. There is an overarching plot, but it's just not the focus to this one. In terms of the character stuff, Sean Connery's the first. He's absolutely, quote unquote, the lead, but it is barely. This is so much of like an ensemble piece, especially once you get into the staff sergeants and the RMS and all that stuff. And it's weird because when the movie started out, I guess I had the vibe that I didn't expect it to flesh out everybody within a reasonable thing, or more specifically, if it was going to go into depth with each of these characters, I thought there were going to be caricatures. I thought it was going to be very much like Sean Connery gets very fleshed out, maybe one of the other ones, but then everyone else is going to be like here's the guy who is a coward, here's the guy who's like comedic relief, like something I could boil down into a single line like that. But as the movie progressed, like it kept giving them all of this depth, all of this development. Not that we even really ever find out about like their histories that much, but it just really delved into getting to understand how these characters react to being thrown into this horrible, basically hell on earth for them, and what all they do in terms of banding together, splitting apart, looking out for themselves, looking out for each other. It does a great job. And then on top of that, once they start fleshing out the staff sergeants as well, once they start really getting into the characters of those, I wasn't expecting that at all. But by the time we hit the end, I think they were some of the like best characters of the movie, which shocked me because I thought for sure that was just going to kind of be like the guard from Shawshank sort of thing, where he's like, yeah, he's there, but like, do we really know anything about him? So no, I think it was all very well done. And then add on top of that, the cinematography in this is fantastic. They do a great job of using this hill as such a great like metaphor visually, everything else like that. Everything else in the camp is also set up so visually interesting. So no, it's a great movie. It's fantastic. I will say, I think it's still underneath the last two for me. I don't think it's quite up to the level that I have for Pawnbroker or Failsafe, but it is still an incredibly well done film.
Yeah, I've been saying repeatedly basically about how good the cinematography is in these movies since the very first film, really. Last two were especially great, and I think this one immediately was doing things with the camera, with long takes, going around this, because we basically, as the opening titles are playing, we get various shots, or in some cases just one long shot of like the men who are already there running around doing their drills, and we see, by the very first shot of the movie is someone who's been sent up to the top of the hill to pour more sand up there, because it's obviously something that as people are running up and down it, the sand keeps getting kicked down, right? Is it eventually it'll be worn away if they don't keep maintaining it and keep adding to it. So this guy goes up with a bag of sand, he sort of stumbles back a bit and then collapses due to heat exhaustion, and like two men come run up to, so we open this movie and someone I'm not saying he's dead here, but it's someone who has been defeated by the treatment of this place. This is someone who just collapses, and that's what we start on. And I think like the first time like our main group of characters are told to just run around the hill, the entire shot is just a shot like the camera's the cameraman's on a tripod up the top of this hill, and he's just following them around in a circle from that top vantage point for a long time, and you just get this ominous feeling of like what this central thing represents, that it is this literal obstacle that is going to be the pivot point of the whole movie. But then on top of that, there's like so many good things, and this is something that he's like Lumet and his cinematographer's been doing a lot in the last few movies, and even back to 12 Angry Men, is just knowing when to swing round in shot into a close-up. Like it'll be on like a profile 2 shot, and the camera will swing round into a close-up that's almost POV. In fact, there's a few moments in this movie where it goes straight into like POV shots of a two-person conversation, so you've got a character just looking right at you as they're making their argument for whatever they're doing in the scene. And every time it did this, I'm like, the balls on this director. He just knows that he can pull off this flashy stuff, but it never feels like overly flashy. It feels just absurdly confident and just a great grasp of the technical qualities of cinema. And then, yeah, like the character writing is really solid throughout. I would agree that it's probably a step down from the last two, at least overall, but arguably I think the camera work might even be better than the last two. It's just that the writing and the characters, well, great, it just isn't quite as spectacular as the last two. But performance is good. I got into it, and I'm not saying it's quite the same as the ending of the last one or even the last two movies, but once again, it felt like it had a really interesting ending where it didn't just give you a clean cut thing. It gave you something to think about and ponder over and think about what it means. And that seems to be also be a bit of a signature at this point from Lumet's movies. If anything, it's actually kind of wild thinking about 12 Angry Men and thinking about how much of a definitive ending that has compared to most of the ones we've done for this season, which is not a detriment to that movie. It's perfect for that movie. It works. It was the right choice, but it's interesting how so many of these movies this season have had an ending that's a bit more ambiguous, or at the very least a bit more of a gut punch or something to that effect, right? It's not all been clean-cut, happy endings, everything's solved, and all the arcs are done. In some cases, the arcs are left up on top of the hill, and you're not going to come back down. They're staying up there. So anyway,
there's so many different ways we're going to bring up the hill as like, and this is a visual metaphor for this and this other thing and like that and more stuff.
Yeah, no, it was really good. So I had a great time, and it's the sort of thing where the only real critique I have, and this is funny given I'm the one here from the UK, but I did have to turn on subtitles because some of it's particularly the RSM, the man in charge, the major, him shouting orders and so quick in his accent, I was struggling to actually make out what the hell he was saying. So I had to turn on subtitles, and he is just yelling and barking these things, and I'm like, what the did he just say? I'm not following it. And I don't think it's a sound quality issue. I don't think it's like an audio mixing issue. Maybe there's one or two times where I thought the marching in the background might have got away in the little. But for the most part, though, I think it was just like an accent and dialect kind of thing.
There's a section where he's essentially giving a soliloquy in front of the entirety of like the prison. And so there is no marching. There is nothing else like that. And he's just giving the orders. And I still only could pick out like every third word. It's just a him thing. It's just like the accent being that thing.
So you had subtitles on as well, I assume.
I mean, I usually have subtitles on, but this is one of the few that like I went the extra mile. I didn't watch this on my computer. I was like, you know what? I'm enjoying Sidney Lumet films so much right now. I'm gonna dim the lights. I'm gonna put it on the big TV. I'm gonna boot up the sound bar. Yep. I'm going the whole 9 yards. And then I still could not understand this man.
Yeah, no, it's funny because there was one point where he just said the words "yes, sir." And that's what the subtitle said, but I swear there was like 5 extra syllables in whatever he said. It was like, yes, sir, and I'm like, what are you saying, man?
You got to keep the prisoners on their toes. You got to make them question what they're hearing.
Yeah. Also, I'm still, this is a long time military thing that I still don't quite get. Are they saying attention when they go attention, or are they saying something else?
I look, I'm also not military, but I have always thought that it's attention. There's attention, and then there's at ease, and those are like the two main ones.
But I swear sometimes the way they pronounce it's like atten hut or like something like that. Like they say it in some weird ways, and I'm poking fun at military conventions at this point. But it was. But it's so funny as well because it's World War II. They're still saying things like, "Oh, you're wearing the king's uniform," and I'm like, "Shut up."
That is the king's uniform. How dare you? I will say, we may poke fun at some of the military things here, but that's kind of a big aspect of the movie is because we're coming in from Sean Connery's side of things, and he is here as a person who went against orders without getting too specific about that. They do question a lot of the military procedures and like how things are done, and it's a major focus of it.
No, it is. It absolutely is. So yeah, there'll be some joking about it, but there's going to be some actual discussion about how the film presents those topics, certainly. Because you get the sense as soon as they walk into that prison, right, without knowing where it's going to go and what the backstory is exactly, you get the feeling that whatever Connery did, he did it from a place of belief rather than just like, because one of the other guys, like he stole some bottles of whiskey, someone else tried to run and go home, like he went AWOL, right? They're all things that are clearly in the wrong. It doesn't make them monsters or anything, but it's just, they clearly did something bad. Whereas you get the impression right away, like, when we hear what he did, I've got a funny feeling that we're going to go, I understand, I kind of get and support why he did this.
Well, they do the very smart thing where one of the very first bits of dialogue we get between, I think it's the RMS and the medical officer, is, hey, when that guy comes in, you better find him fit for duty because I want him. After all of like his trial or everything that's been done, I want to crack at him. So you get this vibe that whatever he did, it's at least noteworthy. It's at least bigger than just going AWOL or something like that.
Yeah, and fit for duty in this case just means fit to be physically punished. Like, you know, to run up and down a hill, to be treated like a gym rat and be told to, run drills and whatnot. Are you
standing? Are you actively dying? No? Cool. You're good. Do it.
But you also get the impression that, like, even if the doctor, the MO they keep calling, which is obviously medical officer, but if he ever actually did have concerns, it's like, hey, like, if he's not collapsing, you pass him, right? But of course, this will come back around when it's like, hey, if anything happens to him, it's your fault. You passed him. It's not our fault. It's on you. You're the doctor.
Right.
So there's this weird double standard of corruption, and there's all these things going on. So, and it's a lot of it's character motivated. So we'll get into all that in the spoilies. Not a lot of music in this one either, was there?
No, as far as I could tell, there's pretty much nothing. I'm not even sure there was any playing over the credits, because I remember the credits were very stark themselves. If I'm correct, I don't think there was actually any score at all.
We're in Sidney's no music era. He discovered it with failsafe, and he's like, damn it, I like that so much, I'm going to stick with that. It's nice and stark. It feels raw, visceral.
I mean, we're at 1965. People have been using Technicolor now for a while. Like, you're able to do color. I think Sidney Lumet's purposely just trying to get us back to silent films of old. Like, we're going to take away everything and go back to basics.
I mean, you say that, but I mean, I would also point out that, like, when Hitchcock made Psycho in 1960, he intentionally chose black and white because one of the few things that was still black and white on TV was the news. He wanted Psycho to feel more real, and because the news was in black and white, that would, in people's minds, make it feel more real as a visual medium. So the point I'm making with that is that color, especially for movies, was already the normal by then. So Hitchcock kind of had been making color movies for a decade plus, went back to black and white for that one film. It's a very interesting that every Sidney Lumet film we've looked at so far has been black and white. He has chosen to stick with that because he likes it, seemingly. I don't think there's anything like stopping him from going to color other than his own choice.
I mean, obviously there was a bit more of a cost behind color at that time, but with the name like Sidney Lumet at this point, I'm pretty sure the studios would be like, yeah, bro, go for it. Bring us in the money. I
do not think that matters to anything but independent films, and I don't think that, you know, I mean, the MGM logo was at the start of this. I don't know if they initially made it or they just distributed it later, but either way, you know, I don't think this applies to what Sidney Lumet's making after he's already been nominated for things and whatnot.
Right.
So anyway, so I think we will get into spoilers then, shall we? Spoilers for The Hill. You have been warned, but clearly we do recommend checking it out. I don't think any of the movies this season have not been recommended, at least somewhat positively, but certainly, yes, we recommend this one. So it's kind of wild to say this one's kind of middle of the pack. This is so good, but it's like middle of the pack.
Look, if you spend your entire time staring at like 7 near identical photos of a sunset, eventually you're going to have an opinion on which one's the best and which one's the worst, even if they're all beautiful in their own right. Sure.
I mean, I think a more apt comparison would be like a beautiful photo of a sunset, a beautiful photo of a sunrise, a beautiful photo of, I don't know, a snowy vista, like different things, because they are different things.
Right. I'm just saying they're all the same thing of being made by Sidney Lumet. They're all the same category there.
All right. So spoilers for The Hill. You have been warned, everyone. So yeah, I mean, this is interesting because it's obviously, like you said, the characters get a lot more fleshed out perhaps than you initially think they're going to. Where early on, you're like, obviously Sean Connery's character is going to get fleshed out, and then Ossie Davis' character, like, there's a line very early on, once they get back into their cell, where Connery sort of turns and says, hey, you guys keep your heads down, they won't care about you. They're after me because of what I did, and they're after King because he's their own color. And I was like, okay, is Sean Connery telling me that it's just going to be these two that get all the most of the development because they're the ones that are going to be focused on more by the guards? And you know, I do think they get the most focus. There's definitely levels to who gets what focus in terms of all the characters, and certainly in this cell, I think they two get the most focus. But I think one of the things that was really striking me about this movie, once we get into the back third of it, is there was so many characters in this movie that I was waiting for to have their moment where they stick up for what Roberts is saying and have their heroic moment. Because I think one of the other prisoners in the room with them, McGrath, he's kind of like the Northern English guy who apparently got into a fist fight, and that's why he's here. And he's got a bit of a temper, and he's saying, "Oh, don't you get us into trouble, Roberts." He's like, "Hey, you better not like put a spotlight on us and make us," because immediately they start getting drills just because they're with him. So that character, I was like, okay, this is going to feel so uplifting if and when he finally backs him up and says no, like, because ultimately this is all going to come down to they have to report that one of the staff sergeants is doing something bad, that he's mistreating the prisoners, right? And I was like, oh, the moment he finally turns around and stops like lying because he wants to stick up for something that he believes in as opposed to just protecting his own ass. That's actually going to be quite uplifting. And the same kind I was thinking for the Doctor, who kind of always backs down from the Major. He's always like, yeah, you're right, Major, you're right. I suppose you're right. He's not sick because of this and this. It's like, oh, the moment he grows a spine and sticks up for what's right is also going to feel very... And there was like 3 characters like that where I was like, oh man, any one of these characters might get that moment. They might all get that moment. Or maybe this is going to be depressing as hell and none of them are going to get that moment. But there was so many characters who they'd built up where I was like, oh man, I am so desperately waiting for one of them to really stand up. And it was that was nice. No.
That's what I really like about the character development in this is that you get such... Like I was saying before, I was waiting for them to fall into tropes. I was waiting for them to fall into a specific category that could be just easily, okay, that's what they are. And then, yeah, you wait for your moment where they break out of that category. But what I really like about it is that within that, they all still do kind of fall into a category, but there's so much more nuance than that. Where, like, we're talking about the McGrath character, he's told that, you know, he has a temper, he's doing that, but you get from the way that he interacts with the other characters and the way he's doing that is he is the type who, like, he recognizes he's here. He just wants to keep his head down. He doesn't want to, like, do anything, quote unquote, wrong that's going to get them into any more trouble. And that's what enforces, like, that vibe that you're waiting for him to get past his own thing of not wanting to cause more trouble in order to stand up to the system, in order to get to that point. They're using the character development to drive you to want to see them to change all the more.
Absolutely. And you get invested in it. And immediately he is very passive aggressive to Roberts, and that's the Sean Connery character, just in case that wasn't clear yet. Because he keeps saying little things like, oh yeah, but you disobeyed order because you're a coward, or you know, little things like that. He'll make these little comments, and I think it's really interesting watching that relationship throughout the course of the film, where I think there's definitely a point somewhere in the middle where you can tell he's not willing to stand up for him yet, but he kind of knows that he was wrong about what he said up front, right?
Yeah. Well, it gets to be to the point where he realizes that Roberts is right and that, like, the guards are completely in the wrong, but he's still at that very understandable and relatable point where, because he sees how bad the guards truly are now, if he speaks up, it's only going to be that much worse for him. So now he's really wrestling with just morality-wise what he should do.
Yeah, he's not willing to, like, martyr himself effectively to try and, like, make a change. He's not, like, because that's the thing, that's the interesting thing that comes up about Roberts and then the Major, because the Major obviously is really strict, really proud of his prison, and he has this kind of, like, code of, like, no, they send the riffraff here, and I'm going to build them up into soldiers the army will be proud of. That's his whole thing. Yeah. And while he does do a lot of questionable things in the movie in terms of his attitude, in terms of how strict he is, in terms of what he kind of lets, you know, what he tries to cover up and whatnot, you kind of tell that he still believes in those things, and it's actually the main Staff General Williams who's the real nasty one. He's just, because I think he's just arrived. They kind of set up at the start that he's just arrived here. He's kind of the new person. He's very ambitious, and he's so ambitious that he's you know, especially aggressive with the prisoners, which is why we get into a lot of the situations that we get into. But I think the thing with him and Roberts is so interesting is that I think there's a little shared, you know, there's a little bit of a shared character trait between them when they finally have their big blow up, like 2/3 or so into the movie. It's very clear that they both devoutly believe in the army, or at least they did, right? Yeah. Roberts did at one point, and he's kind of had this epiphany, this realization about what it actually is like, and how the chain of command fails you, and how the system fails you, and he's starting to question things. And to the Major, oh, that's treason to even say such things, to even question the orders or the army. So I think it presents Roberts as a really unique character in the sense that he clearly has had this complete breakdown of believing in the cause and in the military. Obviously that's interesting from the perspective of World War II's the one that we all can rally behind in a lot of ways, because there's a villain, right? It's very easy to be like, yeah, we have to stop the Nazis, we have to stop Hitler. But I love that they never mention Hitler in this. They never, like, the closest you get is a really weird, poor joke about the shower being, like, don't turn that one on, the gas comes out of there. And they laugh it off. But it's an interesting joke. Like, it's a dark joke, and I would definitely side-eye anyone who says that now. But there's something kind of interesting about seeing soldiers in World War II who have heard some things cracking that joke. I don't know, this is a bit more interesting than it typically would be, I think.
Yeah, no, what I also really appreciate the idea of this being set in World War II, because it's this, like you said, there's a villain to it. There is this absolute evil to it. But when it comes down to this place, it's separate. It is completely detached from the entirety of the war. So it is literally just, how do these people relate to each other in terms of their own morality and whatnot? And the one bit that I wanted to add about the major, and their discussion there, is that when it comes down to the staff sergeants, we'll get to the other two staff sergeants because they are beautifully well done dichotomies. But this is the other dichotomy where, like you said, they're both very devout in their beliefs, but the disillusionment that Roberts has had, the disillusionment where he sees, and again, we don't talk about it too much, but what caused him to come here is the fact that one of his generals gave an order that was essentially suicide to his group. It was essentially telling them, go in there and die, and it won't affect anything, but like, you have to do it anyway.
And just notably, not just him, his entire squad, like it was an entire squad of people that he was commanding. And when he tells the story about halfway or so through the movie to King, when they're lying sort of back to back, and their beds are kind of back to back, I mean to say, but they're having this conversation at night. He explains, oh yeah, we were sent out, because he was part of like a tank unit or whatever, and he went out and half of his squad got wiped out. It was like, if the mines didn't get us, their enemy would. It was suicidal because of how it was playing out and what the setup was. So he went back to his commander and said, look, this is the situation. They wiped out half the squad in seconds. There's no point in sending us out there. What should we do? And the commander said, I've got orders, go back out. And he says that he doesn't even remember throwing a punch. He just remembers the next thing that there was other soldiers pulling him off. And his squad were sent back out when he was locked up, and his squad are all dead. So now it looks like he got out of having to die when what he was really trying to do was fight against the idea of like, all my men should not be sent out to die. It's useless. It's not going to achieve anything.
And that's what I like what I was saying in the beginning of why this is so good that it's set in World War II, is that we have that juxtaposition of there's absolute evil, but in there being absolute evil, you have the line of the ends will always justify the means. If there's an absolute evil, we are literally able to justify anything to stop that, even if it means just throwing away these lives. And so this dichotomy between the RMS and Roberts is the major is still devout to the system. He is 100% rules-based, whether they are good rules, whether they are bad rules, whatever they are, he follows the code. Whereas Roberts is 100% based off of just the idea of common sense of caring about your fellow man, like putting not even the individual above the cause, just the idea that the cause is not the end all be all, that what's left if we let everyone die, Well,
notably, after he tells that, I think it's the same scene where after King says something about, oh yeah, why, it's not bother for all. Like he kind of like sort of like cheers him on for it, and immediately Roberts is like, no, if we didn't follow orders, there'd been no one left to fight the enemy. So he's still like, that's why I say he's in this conflicted place where he still believes in the goal and the purpose of what the military is supposed to do, particularly in World War II, because like we said, there is a very clear enemy that we can all kind of rally behind, an enemy who's doing very bad things who will not stop unless they are stopped. And so that's why there's so many movies about World War II, because there's a villain. It's an easy movie like target to make a movie about World War II. But it's this idea of like, whether it's men blindly following orders because they're told they have to follow orders no matter what, regardless of what they are, or it's, in the case of Williams in the prison, men who are so ambitious about moving up the ranks and being like, as harsh as they can be, possibly because they even get some enjoyment out of it. There is like this abuse of power. There's this abuse, like this idea that putting on this uniform and being given a certain rank gives people a sense of superiority that they then get to flaunt and wield. And that's why Williams is like, he is a villain in this. We said a lot in Failsafe that there was no villain. Williams is a villain, and he's a very easy to detest villain because he's exactly the type of character that I love to hate, because he is petty, he is mean-spirited, and he is doing it all under this kind of guise of like that he can get away with it. And that in the real world, because one of the first things that Robert says to him, the first times that Williams ever comes up and like barks in his ear about, oh, you're a coward, you didn't go and fight when you were told, and Roberts just turns and says, oh, aye, so you're no coward getting a permanent job at one of these prison bases, are you? Like, he throws that back in his face, like, yeah, well, what are you? You got this gig. You're not out there fighting. You're looking after, you're punishing your own men instead of actually going out there and fighting, which is fine. Someone has to do it, I guess. Like, you're going to have a prison like this for the disobedient soldiers, but don't throw in their face that you're somehow this like heroic war hero. It doesn't make any sense.
That's the bit I really like about the staff sergeants here is we've kind of glossed over the last one, who is Harris.
Yes.
And Harris is humane. I won't say he's kind, but he is humane. He is treating these men with a level of respect and understanding that these men, they made their mistakes, they did whatever, they are here paying for it. And when it's done, they are going to be going back out into that war. Like, it's not something where this is like, pay your crime and then go back home. They're going back out to fight after this. And so he's treating them with the bare minimum level of like, we don't have to make them as miserable in here. So that dichotomy between Harris and I was going to say Stevens, but Stevens is actually the last guy. Williams, that's right. Stevens and Williams, it's not Stevens, goddamn it, Harris and Williams is just fantastic in the way that you see how one sees them as these men who are going back out to the front lines, and the other sees them as criminals, people who broke the law. Both are true, but the way that you view them determines how you treat them and whether or not they are going to be treated like hell or treated like actual people.
Yeah, because, Williams clearly just wants to break them. He wants to, like, he's given orders right away to, like, run them around the hill, run them up and down. In fact, Roberts, make sure he does it longer. Like, the rest do it 5 times, but he has to do it for half an hour, just up and down, up and down. And, we see a lot of this play out. I really love, actually, that the first 45 minutes of this movie is their first day at this camp, right? Outside of, like, when they're running up and down the hill, which does kind of go into a montage, because you don't get it in real time. It almost feels real time for about 45 minutes, barring that one part of the montage.
I will say, when they're going up and down the hill for the first time, you do get it eventually in montage, but like it holds on the first 2 or 3 times
the first
that they go over.
Does, yeah.
And you see just how immediately it breaks them, because it's not like they're just running up in their skivvies. They're holding full army gear. Their kits are over their shoulders. Like, it is blistering hot, and you can feel it that like all it takes is twice around this hill, and you are already praying for death.
Yep. They're not obviously having a good time. It's fair to say. And it does the whole rundown where, the major goes up to each of them and says, okay, you did this, and that's why you're here, kind of thing. And that's when we get the all that. And we also got our first hints at maybe the treatment that King's going to get, right? He doesn't say anything particularly racist in this first time, at least compared to later anyway, where the true colors come out, if you will.
Yeah, I think the only thing they specifically say is like, all right, well, you're black. You're not going to be around with the rest of the white men here. You're going to be separated out. And then he points out that he is a member of the British Isles or whatever. He does actually have all the rights afforded to British citizens and to be treated equally as such. And they're just like, fantastic. All right, then you're in and you will be treated exactly the same. Get up on that hill.
Yeah. Which I think they're delighted to even hear that, to be honest. I think they like the idea of getting... I don't know exactly like how separated he would be if he didn't say that, but I feel like they want him in this group so they can break him. And this is something where there's some undertones with how they treat him throughout, and other characters acknowledge it. And even like, one of the other prisoners, kind of the chubby guy, Bartlett, he kind of goes into a little bit of a racist... it's kind of in a jokey way, and like King laughs it off, but it does feel like, oh, you're just saying a bunch of shit right now. Yeah,
he says all this, like, I wouldn't say extremely racist, but like it is, because it does have that joking edge to it. But then King chirps back with, yeah, and you're white trash. And then everyone in the room's like, whoa, hold on now. Like, white trash, that's a bit much. Let's tone that back.
Well, not everyone. Roberts doesn't say anything, but that's when McGrath chimes in and says, "Hey, I don't care much for that term, white trash." Wait, right. so everything that he was just saying about watching the movie where the black people were, in the jungle living in trees and all the other stuff that he said, you were okay with all that. You didn't think he crossed the line there, but all of a sudden he says white trash. And the funny thing is, it's not even like he's saying they're white trash. He's saying that someone like Williams is white trash, and I'm like, yeah, he's worse than that. You could go much worse than that. Honestly, he is scum. He's terrible.
Yeah, and for the Bartlett character, just to really lay that one down, McGrath, he's the guy who just wants to keep his head down, doesn't want to do whatever. Bartlett is a character who is defined by wanting to put himself first. He is selfish. He is someone who goes about his way and is just like, the only thing I care about is getting out of this. Screw anybody else around me. I'll throw whoever I need under the bus, but not in like an evil way, just in like a greedy, self-serving sort of way. Like whatever's going to, it's that like the advisor to the king sort of character, where it's very much he'll just go whichever way the wind takes him as long as it gets him out on top.
Yeah, obviously he's never going to be the one that kind of like backs anyone else up. In fact, he stays true to that to the very end, where he never ever sides with them. He says, "Move me to a different cell. I'm sick of these crazy people that you've put me in here with." He says whatever the Major wants to hear anytime he's asked. That is very much that character, and it is till the end. So that is him, and I think it's also worth mentioning as well that the Commandant, who's actually the one who's really in charge of the area, I guess, or he's the person the Major answers to, and he comes in occasionally. We don't see that much of him, but one of the few things we do see with him is that he does, like, in the morning go to a prostitute. And I thought it was a very interesting thing to see from this character who, it's not even really till much later in the movie you get kind of what his position is when they say, because they keep talking about, I'm going to talk to the Commandant. I want to make a report to the Commandant. And you see it's this guy, and I'm like, the only thing we've seen from this guy in this movie is that he gets to go to a prostitute every morning, it seems like. That's the way it's presented anyway, because we see it a couple of times, and it's always early on. And it's like, it really shows this weird, I don't know if hypocrisy is the right word, but this idea that he's the one that they're all clamoring to like make decisions because he's the one high up and in charge. But he's not off fighting some war or doing anything heroic. He's literally just chilling in the nearby town, like having sex, and then coming in and being expected to be given this respect like he's someone important. Like, I don't know, like I felt, even though he doesn't do anything as evil as the characters we see on the base, I was still a little bit disgusted, but like, wait, why are we having to go crawling to him? Like he's... Well,
it's the same thing with that and the MO, and I feel like those two are almost out of dichotomy as well, but that and the MO, the staff sergeants and the Major and all of that have effectively weaponized the bureaucracy of this place, where they've made it so that no problems ever reach either of them.
Yes.
If a person gets hurt, if anything like that happens, it never sees the medical officer. If someone has a complaint, if someone needs to like file a report or something, it never actually gets to the Commandant. And they've managed to weaponize this bureaucracy in order to keep themselves on top. And that's kind of in the opening monologue when the Major's basically just giving the rundown of the place. He's saying, yeah, and the Commandant, like, if I just shove some papers in his face, he'll sign whatever. He has a willful ignorance as long as he is allowed to do what he's going to do.
Yeah, he basically has a cushy position, and he doesn't want to shake that boat, so he just kind of goes along with however the prison is being run. And it does kind of feel like, and this taps into a lot of real-world problems, actually, and it's something that I see a lot from, like, anyone who's like a moderate who doesn't want to admit that something's a problem in the world, no matter how big or small it is, and they'll say, oh, is that really a problem? Are we blowing this out of proportion? I think one thing that I would always advise people to do whenever they find themselves saying, is this really that big of a deal? And sometimes it isn't that big of a deal, but when you find yourself saying that about a big subject of some kind, just stop and wonder and think about the fact, are you saying that just because it's inconvenient for you to admit that there's something bad going on and you have to either give up something to help stop it, or whatever it may be, right? Or is it because it'll take something away from you personally, or because you have to admit that you in some part have been party to the wrongdoing, because, you know, it's something you see maybe from like a racist person who doesn't want to admit that something they've done is racist, so they'll justify it 10 different ways rather than just admitting, yeah, I messed up, I'm sorry, and, you know, moving on with their goddamn lives, right?
Yeah.
Same idea.
But like it doesn't even need to be something that they personally did. Like it just needs to be something that they can relate to. Anything. If someone in the news says like, oh, a famous celebrity said a racial slur or whatever, they'll be like, what's the big deal? Like people should be allowed to say what they want to say. And then they're thinking back in their mind, like, because I've said that numerous times. And if it's wrong for them, all of a sudden it's wrong for me.
Yep. So I feel like that's kind of what we're seeing here with this commandant character, is this idea of him just keeping his cushy position where it is. And then you've got the ambition of Williams, who wants to like make a name for himself. He wants to punish people, seemingly enjoys doing it. And one of the things that comes up later in the film, actually, that Roberts kind of starts yelling at the Major, which kind of causes a rift between the Major and Williams, is he points out that Williams is already like running this place. You think you're running, but Williams is kind of manipulating you. Because the movie starts with the Major saying to Williams, all right, you're new here, but you know, if you're good to me, I'll take care of you. I'll take care of all my staff, kind of thing. And that's something that comes up throughout the movie, is Williams is accused of certain things and the Major's going to step in and, like, you know, make sure it's done properly, quote unquote, where what he's actually doing is covering it up. But the one little asterisk of, like, again, there's still a little bit of a sense of a moral compass in that Major somewhere, is he does turn to Williams and say, right, I helped you out this time, but if anything happens to another prisoner and, you know, you're connected to it, like, you're going under the bus, I can't help you at that point. Like, I'm giving you one pass. And you know, it's quite... I'm not saying this is a good thing, because Williams, by that point in the movie, has gotten someone killed. He's clearly in the wrong, and the Major should not be covering this up for him. But it kind of shows, again, part of the selfishness of him not wanting to, like, cause a ruckus, because it'll disrupt what he's got going here, perhaps, as well.
Yeah, well, that's the hypocrisy of the Major. That's what I love about him as a character, is he claims he is so for the rules. The rules have to be followed all the time. But the moment that one of his men breaks the rules, the moment that one of them is theoretically going to go under the bus, and possibly, by extension, take him down a peg with them, that's when he's willing to bend the rules and break the rules for them, make sure that they are protected. However, the side effect of that is that he, in order to try to get that justified in his mind, he basically comes at them and says, I'm willing to break the rules so that you don't have to face the official punishments, but I will deal out my own punishments if you keep doing this. Like, I do still have a code within myself that I have to kind of self-regulate.
Yeah, it's really well done, because by the time you get to that point, because that's really the part of the movie that really freshes out that side of the characters, because up until that point it's been most of the prisoners, and the you know, Williams and those other characters have been kind of there, but they've been kind of not two-dimensional, but they've been what they need to be in the plot for the prisoners. And then at that point in the movie, after the death of Stevenson, who's the younger guy we've not really talked about yet, that's when it kind of pivots to be like, okay, let's flesh out that other side of it in these characters, and how the Doctor even, like, gets involved and wants to report certain things, and he's kind of told, no, wait a minute, you cleared him, Doctor, so on and so on. So we should talk about Stevenson, because he's obviously a big part of the first half of the movie.
Just to clear you up, it is Stevens, not Stevenson.
Look, at least I wasn't swapping through character names like you were a minute ago, all right?
They're all first names with an S on the end. I don't know why they did that.
So yeah, Stevens is a bit younger, and one of the things that comes out here, so we obviously we've got some racism throughout here, and that's something that a few of them engage in. But the other thing here is that Williams is also homophobic, and it's not even like Stevens is necessarily gay. He just assumes he might be gay, or at least wants to joke that he's gay, because he's a bit shyer than the others. So he starts calling him a fairy, starts calling him a queen, starts telling, you know, jokes related to that.
For me, it feels like he was just testing the waters to see what stuck, and he realized that, like, oh, he's reacting to this, he's getting upset by it, so I'll keep pushing on that point.
Yeah, I think for me, it just kind of told me who Williams is as a person. Oh, yeah. You know, like, I mean, it would be so easy to just say maybe he's projecting or something. I don't even know if he is. It kind of feels like, I don't think he's projecting because he is in any way maybe gay or something, but I think he's projecting in the sense that he's got insecurities, and that's always what this kind of bully attitude comes from, is this idea of, I am scared that people will not think I'm tough, so I have to be the asshole who's tougher than anyone else.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I will say he did invite Sean Connery into a private cell, just the two of them. So, you know.
Well, yeah, but he actually didn't, because he invited 2 other guards in as well.
Hey-o. Things are getting hot in here.
But, you know, he's making little jokes about that. He's pushing him. He's making him run up and down the hill. And I don't even remember what it is that makes him give him extra runs. Because he basically just he barks them outside when they're in the cell for some reason. I don't even remember what it was.
I mean, there's a few that he keeps on getting this punishment, and it's basically, as far as I'm aware, it's more or less the punishment because Roberts is doing something. Like, he realizes Roberts does have this level of like empathy and care and stuff like that, and so he's punishing the weaker people in Roberts's group basically to get to him, because he notices Stevens is completely unfit to be doing any of this stuff. When they show him that initial thing of them climbing the hill and coming back down, Stevens and Bartlett maybe get 1 before they are struggling. Meanwhile, I think it's McGrath and Roberts do the best. They're doing the best up and over the hill repeatedly.
Well, they're actually people who were serving, you know, like in places of combat. I mean, one of the things that the kinder guy, Harris, he points out when he talks to Stevens on his own, he's like, hey, like, I can tell you're not really meant to be here, and not just this prison, you're not really meant to be in the military. Like, what, you know, why are you here? And he also points out afterwards, it's after he's died, where he's like, hey, he was working at a field office at a desk. He was not serving. Just because he's physically fit in the sense that he's not injured or ill does not mean that he is fit to do this level of, you know, these drills, these like, you know, hard-hitting extreme drills which are pushing people to their brink. He never went through that the same way, or he doesn't consistently go through that the same way that others do. He was in a very particular position, and now you're pushing him far too far. So
and the major points out, like, well, he was cleared as fit to join the army. The MO cleared him as fit when he got here, so he's fit. And then, like, Harris points out, like, yes, he's fit in the sense that, like, he's not falling over and dying, but to put him out there after so long indoors, it's going to shake anybody, and he is not going to be able to make it if we keep on pushing him this hard. And it's not even that he's calling out the major for pushing him this hard or anything. He's specifically calling out that Williams is pushing him far harder than anyone else is being pushed.
Yeah, and the major just sort of says, you know, don't tell me how to run this place. He basically, he does the Chernobyl thing. He's basically like, don't be ridiculous. Reactor 4 is not blown up. Don't be silly. Like, that's basically his attitude to it.
Stevens didn't see any carbon. There's no carbon on the top of that hill.
So, I mean, that's basically his attitude, though. And then to be especially vindictive, Williams makes Stevens run the hill again, but in a gas mask. So he's struggling to breathe, right? Because he's got this thing on his face, and it's after this where he's really broken, where he's like really out of it in the cell, and he's staring into space, and he's, you know, begging Roberts to like not, you know, let him go out there again. He's like, can you help me? And I think one of the things that I really liked, like, sort of the first act of kindness of the others, and Roberts is the one who kind of gets it going, but they all kind of pitch in, is they realize that after he's been heavily punished the first night or the second night, whatever it is, that his attire, his uniform, is pretty rough looking, and he'll get in trouble for that when they all stand up for the commandant the next day for the ceremony. So they're like, oh, we have to try and clean it, and they try and basically just rub it on the walls with some of the water from the bucket they've got as best they can.
Yeah, the walls it's whitewashing, so the walls have like a coating of like dust or whatever on them, and so they're using that to make it look whiter than it actually is. But the commandant, when he comes to notice, he immediately sees, and he gets in trouble for having his clothes whitewashed instead of properly cleaned. Yeah,
I think McGrath says something like, oh, you get that kid out of trouble. And then like the other guy's like, nah, like he would have got into trouble anyway. This at least gave him a chance of not getting into trouble. Let's not put it on his shoulders. But it is kind of an act of kindness that they're doing this when he's sleeping, and he's like, because he's passed out. He's too tired to like even know what's going on. So they all kind of like try and cover for him a little bit. But
I think then it's the next evening, like they do an entire sequence where it's like, he's not okay, we need to get a medical officer for him. Harris tries to, like, the nice guy tries to, like, get everything set in place, but ultimately Williams and the Major run interference long enough that he's brought out for more training, and the medical officer is just kind of gently swept away. Just, oh, don't worry. If he were really that sick, why would he be out training? Don't worry about it. Get out of here. And then that night is when the bad stuff happens.
Yeah, well, yeah, because that's the thing. The doctor comes to the cell and no one's there. And the Major's argument is what you just said. Well, if he was ill, why wouldn't he be still here? And the doctor, like, knows that's a bullshit reason. Like, that just because they've forced him out there doesn't mean he's okay. But because he's clearly getting the vibe that he's been told to let this go, like, you know, like, shut this down. So he's like, yeah, as you say, he would still be here if he was sick. But it does feel coerced. It doesn't feel like that's actually his opinion. So this all leads up, of course, to where young Stevens is just kind of like, he's just kind of lost it, basically. And one of the guys starts giving the orders as if he's one of the staff to make a move, and he just starts stomping back and forth in the cell. And they're all laughing about it, just because it is kind of weird and silly. But then he does just collapse, and the smiles fade, and Roberts like leans over and checks him, and he's like, he's dead. And it's like, oh shit.
Yeah. Lumet does a great job here of, like, it's all shot from pretty static angles as the guys are just talking, but anytime it cuts to the wide shot, you see him standing in the corner of the room just staring at the wall, not saying a word, not doing a thing, not joining the conversation.
He's Blair Witching.
Yeah, exactly. And it's only once he's given or once one of the guys starts imitating a guard that it's not even aimed at him. He's just doing it in the sake of the conversation. But he hears the order, he snaps to attention, and you just get essentially the trauma response. You get this, like, he's reacting without even being able to think about it, because if he doesn't move, he'll get in trouble. And so at that point, Lumet does a great job of moving from the static angle, and you just get these, like, wobbly, low looking up shots of, like, all the guys laughing because they think it's like, yeah, look at him, he's you know, not the brightest. He thinks he's still in the middle of it all, not realizing he's broken beyond belief at this point. And then finally, when it comes time, you get the very low angle shot, and he just falls with his head, like, right next to the camera lens.
Yeah, no, it's a good.
And it's very powerful.
It's a good moment because he does land right in front of the camera, and it reminds me as well. Actually, one of the shots in the cell that I really liked is just to be a dick. Williams, after they've all come out of the cell for the first time and he runs them all back out to get their food, he just walks around the room flipping all their beds over that they've all just set up, and it does it all in one shot where the camera just follows him going around doing it all in one take, and I'm like, you're just a prick.
Well, I love that because it's kind of a running thing. Like, every time that he's told, like, all right, get out of the room, they flip the beds every single time. And you see them coming back in, like, theoretically, they get the beds all set up again. And then I think it comes to a head when, towards the end, Bartlett is kind of left as the odd man out. He's burned all of his bridges, and he's stuck in the cell where everyone else is able to leave. And he just goes around flipping all the beds out of anger. But then the camera stays with him, and he has to, like, go around and set them all back up again once he calms down.
Yeah, no, that's a good moment. So this has happened. They've taken the body away, and there's a little bit in night here where you've got, like, the Major finding out, and in fact, which also reminds me, that first night, once they, like, had their first day, about 45 minutes in, because I actually checked, like, how long was that until we skipped ahead to a different time. You see that the staff and the Major, they're getting drunk. They're just having a casual night of it, and, like, everything's a game to them now, because now they get to, and I'm like, yeah, like, no wonder you like this cushy prison job. If you were actually serving out in the military, you wouldn't be having this at night. You'd be on high alert doing whatever else, you know, the hams in the military.
There's a night shift. Don't need anybody on charge in the middle of, when has anything bad ever happened in the middle of the night?
So yeah, the Major gets woken up, and, like, everyone sort of finds out, and Harris makes his complaint that this is Williams that's did this. He's driven him too hard, so on and so on. And the Major does chew Williams out, right? But does make it, because when he basically says, "Hey, I'll go speak to the doctor and, you know, get this cleared up this way," Williams, because the Major's kind of backed him up in front of Harris, like, almost wants to, like, high five him. That's not literally what he goes to do, but he wants to celebrate. He wants to break out a bottle of booze and, like, let's celebrate. And, like, the Major's like, we're not celebrating a victory. And he snatches the glass out of his hand and pours the booze away. We're cleaning up a disaster. And so he kind of takes it sternly. It's like, you're going to ruin my prison. You're going to ruin the good thing I've got going here, you little shit. So, but once again, when he goes to the doctor and he basically says, hey, you cleared them, Doc. This was you. And it's like, yeah, he was coerced to clear everyone or you would punish him.
I love the way the sequence is done, because the medical officer, again, weakly pushing back. He's saying like, well, no, if I had known this man was on desk duty or whatever, then I would have. And the guy Major pushes back saying like, oh, well, like, you saw his file. Why didn't you know? Why you said he was clear to go? We were operating based off that assumption. And he just eventually keeps on repeating. Like, anytime the medical officer finishes a sentence, regardless of what he just said, the Major just says, yeah, so accidental death. Like, that sounds like an accidental death to me. And he just keeps on saying, like, this is what's going into the paperwork. It was an accidental death. Nobody is responsible, and everything goes fine.
So an accidental death to me. Like, he really barks it. He's got a really shrill voice, this man. And eventually the doctor just kind of gives in, and he goes back to Williams and says, accidental death. And he's like, yeah, high five. His reaction every time is that of like, yeah, I'm getting away with it. This is great kind of thing. But, he does say, hey, if this ever happens to any other prisoner and you've got anything like to do with it, like, this isn't going to go the same way next time. But it's like, how like, is that an empty threat? Honestly, at this point, it's hard to say based on like, what the movie's presented with these characters.
It's exactly what you were saying before of like, if somebody says, oh, it's not that big of a deal, is it because they just don't want to rock the boat?
Yeah.
This is that same sort of thing. How far is the Major willing to cover just because he doesn't want to rock his own boat?
And I think what's so interesting about the next, because like, I was enjoying the movie up till this point, and there was great scenes, there was great moments of tension and moments of acting and all that, and it was fleshing out characters. But I think where it ratchets up some notches is the morning after, where like the guys in the cell kind of wake up and like they end up like Connery's already up with King, and then McGrath complains that they're keeping him up by talking. I think this is the scene where he explains some of his backstory, and then they wake up Bartlett. But before they get out for the mornings, because it's almost time to get up anyway, but like they're almost getting up for the morning, and they start hearing a lot of noise. And all the other prisoners because we don't focus on any other prisoners, we don't get to meet any of them, but all of a sudden we hear all this noise, and there's all this banging on the doors with their tin cups and whatnot. And
I do want to jump in, sorry, real quick. The one thing that happens right before this sequence, which is very critical, is that Roberts has made up his mind. He's going to file a complaint, like an official complaint. Yeah. And all the other members of the cell are like, are you insane? Like, that's never going to work, and yet you're still insisting you do.
Yeah, and he's like, hey, but if you back me up, if you all act as witnesses, then I have to take it seriously. He's basically saying we can maybe get something done about this, but we have to remain tight and strong. We have
unionize.
We have to like go as a unified front on this. So they all start banging, all the prisoners start banging all their rooms, and all the guards are watching, and they come in, and the Major comes in, and he eventually says, all right, open the doors and let them out. But before he says that, he has everyone ready with their batons. Like they're all lined up and down all the walkways, and they all get out their cells, and they're all like banging and they're chanting, and eventually you make out, I think they're singing for a little bit, but eventually it turns into just a chant of Stevens. Our main characters all join in, and well, maybe not Bartlett, but the others certainly do.
Well, yeah, they specifically hold on McGrath for a second because McGrath is silent to start.
Yeah.
Because, again, he doesn't want to rock the boat. He wants to keep his head down. But when he realizes everyone's doing it, he's like, well, I can't be blamed for this. There's no way they can get angry at me, so I'll join in.
That's a very cynical... Like, I did kind of take this as more of like the first sign that he does agree, ultimately, with what Roberts is saying. And maybe he feels a safety net here, because, it's not just him. Like, everyone's doing it. But I saw this as more of a positive thing of like, no, this is like some of like, he really does believe in what Roberts is saying, even if he's not willing to act on it yet.
Yeah, but like, it's important because with the rest of the story, this is not the beginning of his ascent. This is a bump. This is him like getting good, and then it falls back down again almost immediately afterwards, after that safety net is taken away.
I know, but it's the first sign of anything. It's the first sign that he does have something else in him.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's important. I think it is a positive moment, even if it isn't like immediately get into like him actually sticking up for anyone.
Oh, in the moment, I was sitting there like, yes, McGrath, he's on our side. But then seeing as it came down, I'm like, damn it, McGrath, why can't you stick to your guns?
Well, that's the thing. Like, this whole sequence plays out where they're all chanting, and then they bring in the fire hoses. They're going to start spraying them, and then everyone goes quiet. And the Major goes out and makes his big speech talking to. And this is one of the scenes where the camera work is just doing absolute wonders, following him down as he's walking past everyone, going up to close-ups in Connery's face and whatever else throughout the entire scene. And, you know, basically says, what is this all about? And says, he picks out one guy, he's one prisoner. He's like, hey, who are you? Give me your name. And this guy looks back at him and says, Stevens. And the Major rolls with it. He's like, oh, everyone, a man has been resurrected. Look at this. Stevens is here.
Yeah. Well, we better put him back where he belongs, take him over the hill once or twice to make sure he's dead, and then throw him in the mortuary.
So, yeah, they take him away, and then he asks someone else who looks a bit more nervous, someone who's a bit more scared. And he's like, oh, I'm, you know, whoever, whatever his name is. And he's like, did you start this mutiny? And he's like, no, I never started anything. And he basically starts to put the fear in everyone, the fear that you're all going to get punished for this, and so on and so on. And I think what's so great about this whole sequence, which obviously builds up eventually to the whole, like, does anyone want to make a complaint? And obviously Connery's the one that steps out and makes a complaint, and we get to the other part of it. I don't remember if this is before or after that part, but there's basically a part here towards the end of the sequence where he turns around and says, all right, everyone who's not tried to make a complaint, you're going to be rewarded for falling into line. You all get cheese with lunch today. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, cheese. We get cheese.
Which there's several parts to that, even leading up to that, because there's a little bit of a back and forth between Harris and the Major, where
there's so
Harris
many parts,
is like trying to edge him out a little bit. But the one bit that when you're talking to that one guy saying, did you start this mutiny, whatever, one guy calls out in the crowd and says, who killed Stevens? And he flips around and he's like, that's right, yeah. Was Stevens murdered? Last I heard, it was an accidental death. And he basically orders one of the guards of like, take him down to the morgue, have him look over the body, and if he finds any bruising or bullets or stab wounds or anything, then he is more than welcome to march right into the commandant's office and report his findings. And it's again, it's this idea of, we know what happened. We know he knows what happened, but we also know that he's being blatantly opaque and hiding behind the technicality of, it was found to be an accidental death. We didn't touch him, therefore it's not our fault.
He wasn't touched. And of course, when Connery steps out and says he wants to make a complaint and says, you know, Williams killed Stevens, like he murdered him, that's how this went down. And he's like, do you have any witnesses? Anyone who can back that up? He's like, everyone in my cell knows that truth. So he calls up Bartlett, and the little weasel's like, no, sir, I never saw anything like that. Yeah.
But this is after the fear's been struck in. So like you kind of get that things are different than they were in, like, even just 5 seconds ago when everyone was chanting and screaming. And
then, you know, they bring over McGrath, and you're like, McGrath, go on, do the thing, do the right thing. And he doesn't. He says, no, and I almost thought he was going to get him on a technicality and say, well, no, I didn't see him murder him, but he never does that. He just says, no, I never saw him murder him, which technically is correct. He never saw a murder take place. But then they bring over King, and King's the one who has been kind of backing up Connery up until this point, and sure enough, he does. He's like, yep, Williams killed him. I can attest to that.
It's such a good, like, disruption of the expectations, because you're expecting it to be like, oh no, everyone in the cell's too scared to speak up, and Sean Connery's going to stand alone. We get strike one, strike two.
And I love, by the way, it keeps going back to that shot of Connery, but you're looking at him on like a side shot, so you can see like in the background whoever's talking to the Major. So you get this like close up of Connery's face, trying to stay forward as he's, so you're sort of seeing almost like the glimmers of disappointment in his face as one by one the men in his cell are not backing him up, which is going to make this fall apart. Yeah,
but then King manages to step up and he's like, did you see, make your statement? And he's like, Sergeant William killed him. He absolutely murdered him, 100%. So now there's a witness, and so now in front of all these people at that, something now needs to be done about this.
Yep, we have to actually let them see the commandant and put forward some statements and all the rest of it. And obviously this heightens everything. Which does lead to the moment where when everyone leaves, right, and Roberts is still standing outside the cell, Williams comes up to him and, says whatever he's going to say, gets in his face, and Roberts just says, "Oh, go on, make a move. If you make a move, I will put you down." And you kind of believe him. Like you don't think for a second that Williams can actually take him one-on-one in a fight. He's like, "Hey, there's a solitary room at the end of the hall. Let's go, just you and me." And he's like, "All right, I'll take you up on it." But as they're walking over, he waves in 2 other guards, so it's 3-on-1, and they beat the shit out of Roberts to the point where we find out later that they broke his foot. He's actually injured for the rest of the movie, and he can't walk on it really well. So like that becomes kind of like, oh, they've done this to him, and everyone sees how hurt he is, and there's a lot of like, oh no, he's fine, like march him outside, and it's actually Harris who ends up taking him to the doctor's office to. He's clearly injured. He clearly can't do any of this. Meanwhile, Williams is constantly saying, "No, I made this order to do." Because that's one of the things that comes out of the whole protest scene. Is at the end is that the major goes up to Harris and says, "Hey, you now take orders from Williams, right? He's now your superior officer."
Well, that's the thing, is that Harris, right in the middle of all this, right after like King goes back and like says, "Yeah, we know that Williams did this," Harris jumps on and like starts making, I wouldn't say jokes at the expense, but it does make all the other prisoners laugh. Like it is like poking fun at the fact of like, "Oh yeah, wouldn't you know it, Williams managed to kill this guy without anything being touched." And he's trying to egg on the major to do something, like to do anything here. And the major is forced to play along, and like he's cracking jokes back at Harris, and like it's all smiley, it's all like, yeah, no, we're here for a good time, whatever like that. But right, like once he goes up and everyone goes back in their cells and gets them separate, he's like, "Oh, I'm sure you're very proud of yourself for all that, but now you're taking orders from Williams." And you see Harris's face just drop, where he's like, "This is the worst possible situation I could be in right now."
Yeah, and in this last chunk of the movie, because we're kind of in the back, like, I don't know, half hour, 25 minutes or whatever it is now. Yeah. This last chunk kind of boils into a few key things for me. Obviously, on one side, you've got King's like story and how that plays out, where he decides that he's not going to listen to the orders anymore. He's going to take off his uniform. He's quit this military. He does not recognize the British Army's like rights to give him orders. And basically, like, because that's the whole thing, is when they do the whole scene here where they force Connery to stand back up and walk outside, and he's limping the whole way. He can't run the way that he's supposed to. He limps the entire way. And the major like demands, like, this is just a big confrontation scene between them. But the thing that kind of gets to it is that when he asks the other characters to give their, statements, to back him up or whatever, this is where he gets extremely racist with King.
Yeah. He's, I mean, this entire time it's been kind of an undercurrent. Obviously, we mentioned some of the stuff before, but this is the point where while King is just trying to do like back up his friend, do what he needs to do.
And it's the truth as well. It's not like he's lying for it either. He's telling the truth.
Right, absolutely. But it's that idea that the entire point of this, the entire thing of what they're trying to do is to break these guys down. And obviously this isn't breaking him into being a good soldier. This is the exact opposite. But the breaking still happens where he essentially is just like, "All right, you guys keep on doing all of these like Haitian voodoo stereotypes and like jungle stereotypes and stuff like that. Is that what you want? I'll go ahead and give it to you." And he just plays into all of these like stereotypes of like a jungle man, stuff like that, until, it's by the time he gets to the commandant, he does speak to him, but it's so masked behind all of this other just protest against the system, protest against how he's been treated, that it doesn't quite stick, I think, as well as it would have.
But I do like that he drops the act for the last little bit, where he just gets in the commandant's face very seriously and says, "Williams killed Stevens. Remember that." And just walks out. And it's like all the whole time the commandant's saying, "Who's this crazy man? Why is he in my office? Get him out of here." But at the very end, he just gets in his face very serious and says he killed him. And it just, I don't know, I think that moment's quite powerful. And it feels like at that point he has been broken, like you say, to where he's doing this in protest. But the other part of this, of course, is the confrontation between Roberts and the Major, where it all kind of comes out, where Roberts basically just starts saying, "Oh, you follow things by the book." He starts quoting like chapter 7, subparagraph 8, and whatever else, and you do this and this, and you'll follow any order no matter what. You'll like prop up a dead person if you're ordered to, and he's like, "Yes, I will." Damn it! And you don't even realize that. Like you'll follow an order no matter what it is, you won't question it, and that that kind of gets into some of the meat of the character and the idea that there's a level of human responsibility, and it's what, thematically it's not that far away from failsafe in the sense that you can just take what the computer says is accurate in the same way that well, you have to respect and follow the orders of a superior officer. If they give you an order that you actually do find legitimately questionable, there may be a reason one day to say, actually, wait a minute, I think you're giving me a false order or an inhumane order or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, that's the side of it that makes this perfect in World War II, because obviously at the trials afterwards, all the Nazis come out and they just say, we were just following orders. And that's a thing where our basic response to that is, it is your right and your duty when you are being given orders to say whether or not these orders are just, like whether or not yes, you should follow orders, but if they are blatantly like wrong, against the code, anything like that, it is your duty to not follow those orders. And that's the sort of situation that he's calling out the Major here for, is like, you've broken your own rules here. You keep on breaking this code, and yet you just keep doing it because you're so blinded by the rules that you feel that you have to. You're
still in charge, and you get to act like this because you're still technically in charge. But that will, like maybe one day you'll be the one. Because this is the thing, they're all part of the same military. Technically, if he gets caught acting out of line, he's technically just going to get thrown into one of these cells himself, and someone else will come along and run the place. It's...
Well, that was the threat he gave to Williams. He was like, look, if this doesn't work out and you get caught up in here, like, if they don't kill you, I absolutely will.
Yeah. I love that halfway through this scene, they realize that everyone stopped running. Like all the other background prisoners who were jogging around and doing their drills, they've all stopped and they're all listening to this debate.
It's such a great moment because they never stop in this whole movie. The only time that you see everyone standing still is when the commandant comes up that first time and starts doing like the uniform inspection. But at every other point, every single crowd of people is doing a double time march, like back and forth across the screen.
Absolutely. And you sort of realize, you're like, oh yeah, there's been no sound of that for a minute. And part of that can just be a creative sound mix choice where they're choosing to not have it there because they want you to focus on the dialogue really closely. But no, here it's actually a diegetic thing where no, at some point they all stop running. So that sound has actually stopped. And then he tells them to keep moving, and then they start arguing. They continue arguing from that point on.
The fallout of the scene, though, is that because he's so injured, he actually doesn't get to talk to the commandant because the medical officer needs to take care of him and sends him back to his own cell before he can even talk to the commandant about stuff.
Which ends up being where the movie ends, actually. I mean, it's a big scene. It's not like a quick thing, but this is where everything kind of plays out, where the doctor comes in, sees the foot, and he's like, hey, this, he really should go to a hospital. I'm recommending he leave. And he's talking to Roberts. Harris comes in and talks to him.
Harris comes in and he's just like, so he needs to go to a hospital, and it's just like, totally. Who did this? And it's just like, Williams. And then he's like, oh, well, if you're saying Williams did this, I hope you understand I have to report it. And Harris like leans in and it's like, will you? Are you going to report it? Because I'd really, really like if you did that.
Yeah, I will back you up. I will also report Williams' behavior. And Roberts sort of sits up and he's like, really, you two will do this? And he's like, yeah, I mean, this is a thing. So it's like, because I think by this point, especially when he lied back down the previous night, he kind of said something to the effect of like, I'm going to report what they're doing here because someone outside needs to know what's happening in this place. This is not how this is supposed to be run. This is like going way beyond their task.
To tie it back to the whole reason he's here to begin with, he's not trying to escape from his punishment. He knows he probably should be here, but he knows that this is not the proper way to do things. And so he's trying to save other people from this punishment after he leaves.
Yeah, so they're basically, the two of them are agreeing they're both going to report this. And of course, when the Major eventually comes in, and again, the camera work, we're in such a small room. This cell is not very big, but the way this camera like follows the Major around as he's pacing around, and especially once Williams is in here as well, because when Williams comes in here and is like, wait, why, what's going on? Is like, oh, we're sent him to the hospital, we're going to report, blah, blah, blah. Once it's both the Major and Williams, and the Major is like grilling out Roberts, he's grilling out the doctor and saying, oh no, he's sure about this, we can just put him in a different cell, we'll put him in solitary, he'll be fine, you can treat him here, that's what's better for the prisoners, what's better for the men.
Yeah.
And
he eventually tries to pull rank, but then the medical officer reminds him, like, you don't outrank me. Like, when it comes to medical stuff, I have full disclosure, and this is a medical thing. And
one of the things that happens here that I love, obviously one part of it is that Williams tries to blackmail the doctor and he's saying, hey, we'll blame this on you. This is your fault because you checked them out, blah, blah, blah. But my favorite part of this is when Roberts, and I mentioned this earlier, but he basically just chimes in and says, you idiot, you can't even see that like Williams has already taken this place over. You're already doing what he wants you to do. You're covering from him, and eventually you're going to be the one that takes the fall for stuff that happens here, and it's going to be all benefiting him unless you actually do what you're supposed to do and help report him to your superiors, so on and so on. And I love that Williams does try to chime in here, and the way that the Major turns around, and you can tell that he may not admit that he believes what he's just been told, but you can tell that he's thinking about it now, because he shoots him down. He's like, no, you remember who's in charge here, Williams.
He is silently passing along the words of, nothing that can come out of your mouth is going to help your situation now.
Yeah, it's a really well done moment, because this is the moment where like Roberts kind of realizes, oh, I think I just won. Like I think because he no longer wants to stand up for Williams, and it's in the Major's best interest to let Williams take the fall for everything, because it is mostly his fault. Now, don't get me wrong, he's in charge, he should have been running things differently, but this is mostly on Williams. He is definitely the villain here, and this is like all it can take. The tragedy of the end of the movie, right? Yeah. And it's very ambiguous as to actually what happens afterwards, but obviously it doesn't leave you off in a good feeling, is that once everyone leaves, the doctor's saying he's going to report things, the Major's like, yeah, Williams, you're up shit's creek now, and he's like storming out. Like, it's just Williams and Roberts left in the room, right? And the other two, McGrath, who at least actually during this scene, he did finally admit, we didn't mention that part, but when they were asking questions of the others in the cell, he did finally say, hey, I kind of lied and said I helped do these injuries to Roberts. I didn't. Like, that was Williams, and kind of like finally says something to back up Roberts. So
even Bartlett, like Bartlett's still being totally self-serving, but just because of the way that the question was phrased to him, it's just like, and what about you? What's your opinion on what's going on here? And Bartlett's just like, they're all crazy. Every one of them is crazy. I got to get out of here. And I'm just like, yeah, all right, that could technically forward the cause a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I think at one point they say, did you see Williams attack him? And technically he's right when he says, no, I did not see that, because he didn't see that. So, whereas like McGrath actually gets very specific and says they took him away and then they brought him back with a broken foot and like beat up. Like, that was clearly something that was there.
Yeah, that was earlier on when they were almost about to talk to the commandant, was that he took the fall when they said like, yo, so you got in a fight with Roberts, right? And he's just like, yes, I did.
Yeah, which was technically true, because he did sort of scuffle with him once earlier in the movie. Yeah. So there was like a slither of like truth to it,
but not enough to look like this.
Yeah. So McGrath and King are standing outside the cell, so they can still kind of hear what's going on. And Williams like comes towards Roberts, who's lying in the bed, and he's holding his baton, and he's like, "Hey, it's just me and you now." And I'm like, "Yeah, now that he can't stand up, you prick." Right? Yeah. But he's like, he's clearly indicating that he's going to like attack him now, because maybe now he's in a corner and he's got no place left to go, or maybe he's being very devious and knows how this might play out. But as he's coming towards them, the other two come back in the room, right? McGrath and King, and they stand in front of him. And for a moment I thought, oh, this is a really feel-good moment. They're going to stand and protect Roberts and like make sure that this all goes through. Instead, they walk towards Williams as he backs into a corner, and the movie ends on Robert's face as he sort of like falls off the bed and is yelling, don't touch him. You're going to ruin this. You're going to F it all up. We've already won, but you're going to ruin it. And then the movie cuts to, it's going to cut, the movie cuts to black. It says the title, and you're left in this place where we don't know for sure what happens next, but obviously what he's deeply concerned about now is that when they come back and they see Williams with all these bruises and whatever, maybe he's even dead, who knows. And I think what's so good about this is you can't really blame them for having the anger and wanting to beat the shit out of this guy, because he has been a monster to them. But like, Roberts has found a way to work within the system, to reach people who are going to do it properly and run it up the food chain and make sure the right people find out about it and hopefully get some kind of semblance of, you know, the structure, the order restored. But instead, at the last possible moment, some of the men that he's technically helped are going to ruin it with simple violence.
Pete, I'm gonna tie this together in a neat little bow.
Go on.
It takes so long for him to climb up that hill, for him to get up to the top, to finally crest, and then all in a moment, he tumbles back down to the bottom, no better from where he started.
Very, very good.
No, I honest to God believe that's like fully intentional. And it's true of like so many other things in this movie. So many other these characters and the way that their interrelational stuff works is like, even when you look at like the Major and Williams, it's working that, like, how much is he going to cover? How much is he going to cover until finally it reaches that crest, it reaches that breaking point. And then all of a sudden, no, I'm throwing you to the wolves. Like, I'm just, it's a very quick turnaround. And that's same thing with McGrath. He keeps on covering and covering. He wants to keep his head down. He's not acting out. And then all of a sudden, no, I'm sorry, I lied. This is actually what's happening, and I'm willing to fight for Roberts' side. It's a floodgate moment for so many of these characters that you can represent with this idea of the hill. There is one thing that I want to point out about the ending from a sound design perspective, and that is right as it cuts to the end. One of the very few times we get like a full-on sound effect in this movie is the sound of a cell door closing and footsteps walking away. So you get the idea, just from an auditory perspective, you get the idea of you got locked back up and now you're stuck in here. Like nothing really changed there. So while I think it is ambiguous, that sound effect leaves, especially just from the idea of being locked in a cell, makes you feel a lot worse off than positive. Obviously,
what Connery's yelling out does not imply anything good from the outcome of this. And I think the other beautiful part of it as well is that his backstory is that he lost control in anger and didn't do maybe what he was supposed to do, where the right thing to do in his situation, in his backstory, would have been not to attack his superior officer, but to just refuse to go and say that he's, lodging a complaint and he's making an official, stand against him, blah, blah, blah. Because if he'd done that, maybe him tying up the works might have even stopped the rest of his squad from going back out. But instead, because he just got thrown away immediately as someone who attacked a superior, someone else just ordered them out and they had to go. Now, maybe it wouldn't have changed the thing, but possibly a different outcome might have happened. And here, what he's witnessing is these two other men making the same mistake that he had already done. They're getting violent, and because of that, no one can now listen to them after the fact because you got violent and hit a superior officer. In the same way that at the start of this movie, no one looked at Roberts like he was anything but a scumbag who assaulted a superior officer, because that's all they can think about, instead of thinking about the reasons why he did it, why he was refusing to go back out into the front line. There was reasons that maybe were good, but no one cares about it because all they can think is you got physical and you act like an animal, right? And that's it. So it's a really sad ending. Even if somehow they still kind of like prove that Williams did something bad, but he's going to argue that he got all these bruises when he was attacked, and so on. Clearly they're just animals. You can't listen to a word they say.
Here's the question. Witnesses? I don't remember any witnesses for anyone attacking Williams in the cell. I don't think anybody saw that. So who's to say what really happened in there? I think it was an accidental beating. I think he tripped and hit a wall.
I think you'll find that magical reasoning that lets the guards away with things is not going to work quite the same way for the prisoners.
Yeah, probably not. No. I mean, honest to God, I don't even know I'm sure there is, because there's 1,000 levels of bureaucracy. I don't even know who not like if a prisoner of war or something needs to lodge a complaint or something, that's like a Geneva Convention sort of thing. If a person who was convicted of a crime in the military needs to lodge a complaint, I don't know who they'd report to.
I guess it's bringing up the food chain, but as we've already pointed out, the people in charge of this place are making it almost impossible to actually report to anyone above them, because they're not allowed to write letters and send anything off anywhere. Like, they've got such a tight control of any information leaving this place. They have complete autonomy to do whatever the hell they want, and it's it's obviously that idea corrupts, and it's you can use it as a microcosm to talk about how headspaces work when someone has too much power, and even away from the military. But obviously, in this particular context, you're getting these ideas, and I think if nothing else, one of the main themes of the movie is the idea of the abuse of power and what the rules and structure are supposed to be, and how it's manipulated by those who either use it for their own gain or use it for their own power or use it to be hypocrites, whatever you want to call it.
I guess my one question with the movie, the one thing that it's obvious what side it's coming down on. In the side of Roberts being our primary character, his belief system is probably the one that the audience is meant to believe the most. Yeah, well, but we do.
I was going to say, I think, obviously he has this flawed history, but ultimately he's learned from that history. It's almost like he had his arc before the movie started, which is kind of an interesting way to posit a character. But it's like he already had his arc, and the story of the movie is him trying to live up to what he's learned, kind of.
Right. I mean, that you said it yourself, that idea of when he's talking to King and saying, if we all disobeyed orders, there wouldn't be an army. He's not an anarchist. He's not saying disobey all orders. He's about questioning the rules. He's making sure that the rules aren't there for outdated purposes. And that's kind of also the argument he gets in with the Major is, the these rules haven't been updated since Queen Victoria's time. But that's the basis of his character, is questioning the rules and all that stuff. My one question with the movie in terms of how we're supposed to see the character is actually Harris. It's the nice guard. It's the one who's actually humane to them, because obviously the Major, we have the confrontation with him. We have the confrontation with Williams, over and over again. But the Harris is the one that I feel like the movie views as almost an absolute good. There's very little pushback on his way of doing things in the movie. And it's strange to me that there's zero pushback on that at all, where everyone else at least gets a little bit of, not introspection, but just that idea of, could they be wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a character. He's maybe the character who's just the most needed to be there for his purpose, as opposed to having some big, intrinsic question about, himself. It's not really. Everyone else has these layers of depth and these arcs. He doesn't really have an arc per se. He's clearly, right from the get-go, more sympathetic and thinks that they're too harsh on the men, and is recognizing that this new guy Williams is especially cruel and is especially bad. So I guess his arc is kind of not feeling like he's trying to suck up to the Major, because that is at the beginning he's walking in and he's acting all buddy and whatever, and then by the end he's just no, you're an idiot. You've let things get this far. I could almost view it as a much more shallow, and I don't mean shallow in the lack of depth. I mean shallow in a not as extreme kind of way, but in the same way that Robert says, where Robert's whole thing is that he's now questioning authority. Harris's thing is that he's already got his disagreements with the Major, but he's biting his tongue and he's acting nice about it, but he's willing to speak up by the end. And the same way that Roberts is, clearly his entire thing in a much louder way is, no, I'm willing to speak up against these rules or these orders that don't make sense anymore, that are ill-fitting from people who aren't the ones putting their lives on the line. And if nothing else, I think a lesson from the movie is this idea that people in a system, not people outside of a system, but people in the system itself, questioning the system and the rules of the system and how it works and trying to make it better, should always be a good thing, and not just be shut down by people up above who don't want change, which applies to lots of things. It applies to capitalism, for example. These things apply to so much.
I love how, like, at least once per season we get into the whole, like, man, capitalism, am I right?
I mean, even anyone who has ever worked at a job where they have questioned something because clearly this is not the right way to do it, and it may not be a moral thing, it may just be like clearly this is not the smart way of doing this, there's a better system for this, and you say that to a superior, a manager, whoever, and they go, don't rock the boat, and that's like the nicest way they'll say it. Maybe they'll get, disciplinary or whatever.
It's the going to your boss and saying, hey, I noticed that we're printing out this spreadsheet and then re-entering in all the values by hand. Maybe we could email the spreadsheet. And they're like, well, now hold on. We've done this way for 15 years now. Why would we need to change things?
Yeah, some people just don't want change, and I think in this movie it's more than that. Like, they're actually benefiting from the status quo.
Oh yeah,
but like, and a lot of people do benefit from the status quo. Whereas I think that's why the comparison to works a little bit weird, because sometimes in work it's just the middle manager just doesn't want to have to do any work, and changing things would require doing work. But
he wants to spend his mornings with the prostitute. God damn it!
Yes, exactly. He wants to spend his mornings with the prostitute, just like the commandant in this movie. There you go. So that was a good film. The Hill. Yeah. It's got deep characters. It's got great camera work, and it's it's got all the staples that we kind of associate with Sidney Lumet at this point. So yeah,
and it has subtitles. Important.
And you might need subtitles, unless you're from a specific part of England, perhaps. You might need subtitles on, but that's okay. And it was really just that one character for the most part that I needed them for. But
yeah, I there was a bit when Sean Connery was during his argument with the Major, actually, he was getting a little bit like extra Scottish. Maybe you weren't getting it because obviously you're Scottish, but for me, I was like, some of these things it's a little hard to get.
Yeah, I was understanding every word he was saying very easily, but I admit, obviously I have an advantage there in that regard. All right, David, what are you rating The Hill out of 10?
I mean, it's a fantastically made movie. Definitely top marks, but as I said in the very beginning, I do think this one is slightly under the last two we had. It's still very good, but I think it's just lacking just a little bit of that extra punch, just a little bit of that extra oomph that made the other two something really special. Great character work, great sets, great everything else there. It just, as je ne sais quoi. I don't really know what to call it besides that. It's just, there's something that the other two had.
No, I think you're falling into a trap here. You don't have to try and justify why it's not as good as something else you've rated higher. You just have to justify why it gets to the score you're going to give it, right? You're climbing a hill. You're not coming down from some like invisible peak above the hill. You're climbing the hill.
All of the scores, however, are relative to each other, and that is absolutely how I do my scoring at this point. But no, it's still fantastic. I'd say that this one, if you watch the ratings rundown, makes total sense as to why I say it. It's an 8.5. I think it's a strong 8.5. It's very good. Definitely worth checking out if you haven't already seen it. I can't remember if I rented this one or if it was free on YouTube, but it's definitely available.
Yeah, I would also say 8.5. I think that was the score I had in my head, which is to say it's a great movie, and I think it's well worth watching, and it felt so smooth to watch. It was never dragging. I was just locked in, and the dance of the camera was so good. One thing that you said during ratings rundown that made me think of another scene is this idea that we barely see outside the prison. There's only like maybe one time other than the commandant with his prostitute, the only time we ever see the Major outside the prison is when he's at like a bar and there's like belly dancing happening. I think there's like a local town that they go and visit. That's when he finds out that Stevens is dead, and it's almost like the time where he's trying to like live outside the prison. Like, the fruit of how he's ran that place comes to get him, and I like that little moment. So anyway, 8.5, great movie, obviously highly recommended. So that is The Hill, and it's not one that gets brought up as much out of this batch of movies that we've talked about, so I'm happy to have seen it. I think this and Fugitive Kind don't get brought up probably as much as they should. So
just to interject, does this film make the cut?
Yeah, of course it makes the cut.
Yeah, I'd say so. We did put the last two at a cut above. And I think both of us probably have the same sort of feeling that this is less than that. So I'd say makes the cut. But if you have an argument for a cut above, I'd love to hear it.
I'll say makes the cut. Okay. I think that's fine. I think it's an upper makes the cut. I guess we'll say.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's fine. So yeah, we've still got a couple more Lumet films to do. Next time, we're going to the Anderson tapes, which is skipping ahead about 5 years. And the reason why there's such a big skip here is because a lot of Lumet's 60s films, despite the fact that we've done now, 4 of them, there's a lot of them which just aren't that available. And if you can find them, they are in pretty rough shape, and they're badly needing someone like Criterion or Arrow to come in and do some remastering and get them up to a nice shape. So, look, if they ever release them, I'll happily shove them into a future Lumet season, and we can do a go back and catch up kind of thing. But some of them are just tough to get to. And I think maybe 1 or 2 were clearly a little bit lesser looking in terms of their reception as well. But
I was gonna say, I'm looking at a 5.3, and that's incredible.
Yeah, that's wild.
Lumet at this point. Yeah.
That's wild. But Anderson tapes is what we're doing next. So we could check that next time, and there's one more after that before we get into Christmas season. But I'll just tell you about supporting the show if you would like. You can help make sure all the episodes keep coming, both this show and our sci-fi movie show, The Atomic Serum Experiment, the horror movie show that I do with Tim, Screams After Midnight. You can help keep all of that coming by going to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and supporting us over there. It helps, me make all the shows, all that good stuff. You can also do this via YouTube membership, but you get bonuses. You get the Ratings Rundown segment for both Ace and Collector's Cut. We do a monthly exclusive show called Extra Reels where we review some of the worst things ever made, and those are either very funny or we're just miserable, which may also be funny for you. Not funny for us, but maybe funny for you. So if that sounds
it's funny
like fun,
looking back on it, at the very least.
if that sounds fun, then you can get that as one of your perks for supporting all the shows. But yes, thanks to everyone who already supports us. It is greatly appreciated. And of course, look forward to next week's episode and all the stuff we're doing in Ace right now. We've got a bunch of theatre releases coming out, so we're doing a lot of new stuff over there. The complete opposite from all these 60s and 70s movies we're doing on Collector's Cut at the moment.
I finally sat down and told my wife, I'm going to be going to the movie theaters on the upcoming weekend, and the next one, and the next one. She's like, do you want me to come to any of these? I'm like, you don't want to see these, trust me.
Really? Not even... Running Man looks very mainstream friendly.
If I had any chance, it would be Running Man. There's no way Begonia is getting past that filter.
She may like Chad Radwell. I mean, Glenn Powell. That's his real name. Chad Radwell's his character from Scream Queens, which is why I called him that.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. I can't remember if she went to go see Twisters with me. I think she did. So maybe I could get that one.
Just promise some Juicy Man meat and they might pick her up.
Excuse me. She gets all of this. She doesn't need any more.
Also, you said my wife, so I have to. I'm legally obligated to go, my wife. So.
Never gets old. What is this, 25? Yeah, it's like 20 years now.
You can separate the millennials from the Zoomers by the people who are going, my wife.
Jesus.
Honestly, I would not even remember or think to do that, except there's at least 3 different podcasts I listen to where they all do it anytime someone says my wife, and I'm like, oh god, wow. I'm in such a specific age group where everyone's doing it. Anyway, that's the show, everyone. That's Collector's Cut. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time. Keep watching movies, and if you can get it, it's always nice to have diplomatic immunity.